Good afternoon, dear viewers, investors, and everyone who cares about the LLC Sovelmash project. You are watching the LLC Sovelmash channel, and this is the Expert Time Show.
Good afternoon, dear investors, dear partners, dear haters, dear viewers. Good afternoon to everyone. So, the work of the tax authorities continues as usual. We filed reimbursement. The tax authorities are checking us very thoroughly. They came to our location, conducted a comprehensive field audit, interviewed several employees, looked for so-called dead souls, and asked questions like, do you actually work here? What does the building look like from the inside? Where is your specific workplace? Where is everything located within the premises? That's their job. VAT reimbursement is a very unpleasant and often complicated procedure. And it's not that simple, because the management team, along with everyone who is involved in handling finances, dealing with taxes, processing orders, and managing the company's funds and resources, all experience a considerable amount of pressure in their daily work. This pressure comes from the need to be accurate, to stay organized, and to ensure that everything runs smoothly and efficiently. The accounting department handles all of this. This is pretty serious, but of course, we could have chosen not to claim VAT reimbursement from the budget. But to help you understand what VAT really is, let's do a little calculation. So right now, we're actually getting a reimbursement that comes out to about 200 million. What does 200 million mean? With the average price of a machine being about 7 million, that's roughly 30 machines. So you could definitely say that the vast majority of the machine equipment and machinery for the project was actually purchased, in large part, thanks to the VAT reimbursement. Yesterday, we had a joint meeting with our representatives, our specialists, and the specialists from Mosgor Architecture, where we came together to discuss our ongoing work and ensure that everyone is up to date and aligned on our shared objectives and the next steps. It was a very productive meeting. We clarified and figured out a lot of things. I won't go into all the details right now, but I do want to point out that the Moscow government is also directly involved in this process, along with the management of the Technopolis itself, because it is truly time to address these issues, finally resolve them, and make sure everything is properly set up and running as it should be. Everyone understands this perfectly well. They realize that the process has dragged on not just with us, and that a decision was needed. That's exactly why we had some very serious and important work done, which I truly believe will help to significantly simplify this entire procedure for all of our future projects and beyond, because our developments, as well as our architectural work, including the mistakes we've made along the way, all of that has been carefully analyzed and thoughtfully reviewed. Conclusions have been drawn from this process, solutions have been outlined in detail, and I believe that the results we are working toward are not far off and should be achieved soon. That's why right now, today, yesterday, today, and up until Monday, we will absolutely be actively working on all of these important issues, and I'll definitely be working on them there as well as planned. And then next Thursday, I will report to you in detail on what we have accomplished so far in our efforts to achieve results. I will also explain the steps we have taken to obtain approval for the architectural and urban planning solution, and I will outline the next steps that we plan to take moving forward.
If we don't fit into the military-industrial complex, which is safer, does it make sense to sell the production line and the royalties for the small quadcopter units to someone who wants to and knows how to work with the government? Not us.
You see, those who are currently working with the government, let's put it this way, I honestly doubt they're actually manufacturing anything, because from what I see, everything that's flying right now is from China. No matter what anyone says, it's all originally from China. Yes, there are indeed some batteries being made elsewhere with varying levels of quality, but you have to understand that a battery is actually an entire supply chain. That's how it was when we worked for the space industry. How many companies were involved in the space program? More than 100,000 enterprises, including food industry companies that handled astronaut food. It's the same with battery and accumulator production. Where does it all start? With excavation work. In order to access a deposit of rare earth materials, You first have to very carefully and thoroughly remove an extremely large amount of soil. For that, you need rotary excavators, railroads, train cars, waste dumps, belly-Z heavy-duty trucks, and so on. At the same time, you have to build processing plants and so on. And only after all that do you finally get a usable battery. This takes years, even decades. What had already been developed and excavated is now in China's hands. That's exactly why there won't be any lightning-fast moves here. This is truly a long and gradual process that requires massive investments. So, most of this production is concentrated in the land of the rising sun. The same goes for electronics and everything else. Yes, we do make screws and actually pretty decent propellers. Just the other day, someone offered 10-inch ones. They're good, really quite decent overall. So we can say that if we are supplied with the necessary drives and batteries, then we are able to produce. However, it is important to note that this is still not our own manufacturing.
But you made your own encoders. What's wrong? Why order from China?
That's right. That's right. The thing is, yes, we actually developed them, and we built a setup for magnetizing magnetoplastics. All of that is essentially completed, but these are still unfinished products because they actually need a plastic casing. And that, in fact, requires tooling, equipment, and so on. Yes, we have thermoplastic, but it's just thermoplastic, and right now our priority is to make parts for the casing, like handles for the angle grinder. We weigh all the options, and over there, everything is set up, so at this stage, it's actually cheaper to buy from them. So for the first batches, yes, that's fine. And there's another important point here, repairability. You can include a spare kit in that location if you have one available, or just buy one. However, during this period of time, we need to complete the development of our own version, ensure it meets industrial standards, and begin producing it ourselves. But that's for the next stage. So right now, as I already mentioned, we can and do borrow things. For example, the basic rotor, well, where are you going to borrow that from? Nowhere. The stator? Nowhere. The frame? Nowhere. Well, for now, we're flying with a Chinese controller. But later, when we finish making our own, when we finish our controller, we won't even need an encoder at all. So right now, setting up production for our own encoders just doesn't make sense. It's better to use borrowed ones for now. Thank you.
What was the purpose of the tests when we took the drone outside?
A small target. First, there's one kind of behavior indoors where you have reflections off the walls, turbulence, and it's attached to the plate, all of that. And it's a different story when, as you may have noticed, we didn't secure it. It wasn't tied down. There, we had to secure it, but here we didn't. And the lifts. Well, first of all, to see all of this, to lift it up, to spin it around, and on top of that, there's the psychological effect. We checked and double-checked. Then we took the logs to see how the flight controller responded, what actions it took, how it was controlled, and of course, how the shock absorbers performed. It was interesting to drop it from a certain height, about 1.5 meters.
Up to 2, let's say.
Drop it, let it fall, see what happens. Whether the shock absorption was enough, since we hadn't tested it like that before. All of that has been checked, and the thing is, basically, we're going to say goodbye to this frame soon. Why? Because this frame was made specifically for a particular set of tasks. To test concept, module function, shock absorption, unified power module. We checked all of that, the layout, everything was arranged, but the design was simplified, not made lighter. Because even things like this, for example, we tested whether we needed to reinforce the cross seams, since the individual beams, we welded rectangular pipes together, just with a seam. What happens? It doesn't hold. It's clear we need to add gussets. We received a certificate for the production of the angle grinder. Great, but we will have to regularly take samples from each batch produced and subject them to tests, up to the point of physical destruction. But the same thing will happen with controllers and motors for the quadcopter. And not just that, because we will be offering for sale the motor by itself, the motor with the controller, and if needed, the motor with the controller and the propeller as well. We'll be selling this whole module. Whatever people want to buy, we'll sell, but all of it will be periodically tested up to the point of physical destruction. That's a normal process, and on top of that, we'll be making changes that will improve the product's consumer qualities and lower the production cost. And if we talk about what's happening right now, the Modilec currently has the 35th battery pack installed. Where did this battery pack come from? From a bicycle. It's this round one here. But at the same time, right now the team is pouring the 50th pack, and yesterday they installed the 70th pack, which is even more powerful. Using these plates, we'll be making motors of different power levels to meet various needs and for different products with different load capacities and power. On top of that, we have a split winding. How does that work? We can connect different sections of the motor through different power modules and switches. We can control everything from a single controller, but by using switches, we can power the motor by dividing it into segments to increase its power. This is possible. This will be done, and there will be motors with much higher power, because we're even talking about motors up to 200 kilowatts. Yes, imagine 200 for motors at 200 kilowatts, 800 kilowatts. What kind of machine is that? But starting right away with products like that, we don't have the space, the testing grounds, or anything else here. It's simply impossible. That's why what we're doing now is, for our DETB, pretty much the maximum size and power we can handle, and everything else as well. So there are still some very interesting designs ahead, and believe me, they'll be highly profitable. And the profitability will depend on the equipment we purchase, which is intended for mass production.
Can we expect good news on the AUP next week?
We want good news, don't guess. You just have to do the work, and basically working on the AUP, just like when we were once dealing with property rights registration, we kept doing what we were supposed to do, what was directly related to carrying out the project. So AUP is AUP, but the work on the product, on development, on production should continue as usual. Thank you, have a good evening, goodbye, take care.